Number 10. The Violinist. It's been long said that successful artists have made a deal with the devil, and this has been going on for hundreds of years. An Italian violinist named Giuseppe Tartini claimed the devil appeared to him in a dream and played for him the most incredible piece of music he had ever heard. Here is how he described the experience. One night in the year 1713, I dreamed I had made a pact with the devil for my soul. Everything went as I wished. My new servant anticipated my every desire. Among other things, I gave him my violin to see if he could play. How great was my astonishment on hearing a sonata so wonderful and so beautiful, played with such great art and intelligence as I had ever even conceived in my boldest flights of fantasy. Upon waking, Giuseppe tried to recreate it, and that became his magnum opus, known as the Devil's Trill Sonata. Number 9. Exorcism gone wrong. In 1997, Father Gabriel Amorth conducted his exorcisms in Rome, and he asked for the help of Jesus, and the young man he was dealing with began to curse and spit, and started using English instead of his native Italian. Screaming and howling, the demon burst forth and looked straight at him, drooling saliva from the young man's mouth. Father Gabriel said he returned fire with prayers and other ritual recitations, demanding that the demon reveal its name. He said, "Unclean spirit, whoever you are and all your companions who possess this servant of God, I command you, tell me your name, the day and the hour of your damnation." The man fixed him with a glare, snarled, and said, "I am Lucifer." Father Gabriel was shocked. He did not expect to receive such a terrifying response. The father mostly used prayers as his weapon, reciting verses of liberation from the Roman rite of exorcism. As Father Gabriel continually commanded the demon to leave the host, it eventually left, but my goodness, that sounds absolutely terrifying. Number 8. Witch trials. Sarah Good was one of the first 3 women to be accused of witchcraft in the Salem witch trials, which occurred in 1692 in Massachusetts. On March 25th, 1692, Sarah was tried for witchcraft, and when she was brought in, the accusers immediately began to rock back and forth and moan, seemingly in response to Sarah's presence. Later in the trial, one of the accusers fell into a fit. Now, Sarah denied the allegations against her, but another woman on trial admitted to being the devil's servant. She stated that a tall man dressed in all black came to them, demanding they sign their names in a great book. Although initially refusing, she eventually wrote her name after Sarah, and another woman forced her to. When Sarah was allowed the chance to defend herself in front of the 12 jurors in the Salem Village Meeting House, she argued her innocence, proclaiming that the other 2 were the real witches. In the end, however, Sarah was convicted of witchcraft and sentenced to death. So, did she really meet the devil, or was she innocent? Who knows?
In our number 7 spot today, we have Theophilus of Adana. For this one, we are taking it back a little bit, all the way to 538 AD. Theophilus of Adana was a cleric in the Roman Catholic Church. So basically, one day he was elected to become the new bishop, but he ended up denying the offer, as it is said he wanted a more priestly sort of position, and instead of one that came with all of that power and responsibility. It is said that he wanted the position of archdeacon, which would have seen him controlling where the donation money went. So apparently, in passing on this bishop position, he thought that if he gave the position to his rival, then his rival should at least be grateful enough to give him the position he wanted, but of course, that did not happen. This new bishop gave away the seat that Theophilus wanted and instead gave him the position of being a humble cleric. This made Theo super angry, and this is when he thought that maybe the church isn't as holy as he once thought they were. This is when he decided to summon the help of Satan. He ended up signing a contract with Satan in his own blood. He denounced Jesus and the Virgin Mary, and it is said that, with the help of Satan, he was once again voted into the bishop position, and this time he accepted. At this point in time, it is said that he felt so guilty he confessed to this deal with the devil, and the priest who he confessed to decided that they should burn the blood-signed contract. For a second, Theo looked up, but then suddenly he collapsed and died. Many people believe that it was because he had broken his contract.
Number 6. Mom met the devil. A user on Reddit posted this story about the time their mother met the devil. They said, "My mom told me a story of when she met the devil. She was in high school, she had a friend who was dating an older man. He was probably 20 to 30 years older than her, and he gave her a necklace. Not wanting to get caught by her parents, she gave the necklace to my mom. She wore it, and that night when my mom slept, she dreamt of a man. Clean cut and handsome, but disturbingly evil. She said all she knew about the man was that he was pure evil. He came up to her face, eyes locked on her, stone cold and expressionless, reached for her neck and grabbed the necklace from her neck and twirled it in a circle in the air like a witch's pendant. She jolted awake and couldn't feel the necklace, and in a panic she looked all around for the necklace and found it under her pillow in a perfect spiral." Number 5. Father Gabriel Amorth. In 1997, Father Gabriel Amorth conducted his exorcisms in Rome, and he asked for the help of Jesus, and the young man he was dealing with began to curse and spit and started using English instead of his native Italian. Screaming and howling, the demon burst forth and looked straight at him, drooling saliva from the young man's mouth. Father Gabriel said he returned fire with prayers and other ritual recitations, demanding that the demon reveal its name. He said, "Unclean spirit, whoever you are and all your companions who possess this servant of God, I command you, tell me your name, the day, and the hour of your damnation." The man fixed him with a glare, snarled, and said, "I am Lucifer." Father Gabriel was shocked. He did not expect to receive such a terrifying response. He mostly used prayer as his weapon, reciting verses of liberation from the Roman rite of exorcism. As Father Gabriel continually commanded the demon to leave its host, it eventually left. But my goodness, that sounds absolutely horrifying. Number 4. Working for the devil. Gilles de Rais was originally hailed a hero of France for his role in the 100 Years' War, a time during which he served as a comrade in arms to Joan of Arc, but the nobleman Gilles de Rais lived a secret, gruesome second life where he enjoyed ending the lives of people who couldn't defend themselves. In September 1440, de Rais was arrested after an almost decade-long spree in which he may have ended the lives of over 140 victims. During his trial, both de Rais and several of his servants/accomplices confessed to their evil deeds. Besides ending people's lives, he also admitted to engaging in Satanism by reportedly summoning the devil and his demonic minions. While the nobleman refused to sell his soul, he offered the blood and organs of his victims in exchange for knowledge and power over the dark arts.
In our number 3 spot today, we have Jack Parsons. Jack was a man who was born just a few years prior to the Wright brothers flying the first airplane, and being born at a time like this had him growing up dreaming of and reading sci-fi novels about rocket ships taking people to space. It is said that this love of rocket ships and these dreams of going to space are what led him to summoning the devil in order to make a deal. Jack wanted to sell his soul in exchange for a rocket ship. This deal didn't end up working, but Jack continued to study science as he grew older. Later in life, he stumbled upon the teachings of Aleister Crowley that we just talked about, and this is when he tried his hand at summoning things again. This time he tried to summon a goddess named Babylon that was said to possibly help men get to the moon one day. Technically, in some ways, it worked, because Jack Parsons ended up helping create the jet fuel that is said to still be used today. Maybe it was his original deal with the devil, maybe it was the goddess, or maybe it was just good old passion and drive that did it. I guess that all depends on what you believe.
Number 2. In a coma. Will Carroll is a drummer who has been in the band Death Angel since 2009 and has provided the drum tracks for their last 4 studio albums. After spending nearly 2 weeks in a coma fighting Will revealed that during his battle with the virus, he saw the afterlife, where he would be sent to hell and meet Satan. The illness left him in a critical state where he was put on a ventilator while lying unconscious in a California Pacific Medical Center hospital bed for 12 days before recovering. He said that the devil would punish him for the deadly sin of sloth. The musician said Satan would transform him into a creature similar to that of Star Wars' Jabba the Hutt, and that he would vomit blood until he ultimately had a heart attack. Will told the San Francisco Chronicle that what he went through allowed him to change some of his typical lifestyle habits, including his once heavy alcohol and illegal substance use. "I'm also going to listen to satanic metal though," he joked, but he later admitted that after beating COVID-19, he doesn't think Satan's quite as cool as he used to. And coming up at number 1, The Devil Made Me Do It. Sound familiar? It's because the third Conjuring movie has the same title. This film is inspired by the real events that took place with Arnie Johnson. Ed and Lorraine Warren were helping exorcise a possessed boy named David Glatzel in the early 80s. David's family had seen him being beaten and choked by invisible hands, and that red marks had appeared on his neck afterwards. David had started to growl, hiss, speak in otherworldly voices, and recite passages from the Bible as well. They did many exorcisms on David, and Lorraine said that David levitated, ceased breathing for a time, and even demonstrated the supernatural ability of precognition. During his exorcisms, there was also a rocking chair in the room that would allegedly rock on its own, levitate, and even vanish and reappear. David and Lorraine also claimed to have seen the devil sitting in it. Arnie then coerced one of the demons to possess him while participating in one of David's exorcisms. Afterwards, Arnie's personality changed. He would fall into a trance-like state where he would growl and hallucinate, but later have no memory of it. Then one day, his and his girlfriend's Debbie's landlord was drunk and misbehaving, so Ernie ended his life. The day after the incident, Lorraine Warren informed the Brookfield police that Ernie was possessed when the crime was committed. The case then went on to trial, where Ernie's defense was demonic possession and the devil made me do it. The jury deliberated for 15 hours over 3 days before convicting Ernie of first-degree manslaughter. He was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison, though he only served 5. Coming in at number 10 is Mr. Alguin. Ethan Alguin posted online a story that he was told. The story goes, "My grandpa believes he saw the devil. When my dad was a kid, my grandpa used to work at a graveyard. He would get up as it was dark, and within a few hours of working, the sun would come up. One morning, he did what he always had done and got ready for work. As he was walking there, he saw a man in a suit just walking slowly down the street. My grandpa told him something along the lines of, 'May the Lord give you a good morning,' and the guy ignored him and kept walking. My grandpa just ignored it and went to the graveyard as he always had and proceeded to work. After a few hours of work, the sun hadn't started rising yet, and he realized how early he actually woke up, so he went back home. He told my grandma about the guy, and she believes it was something called El Catrin. Apparently, sometimes the devil appears as a very well-dressed person that they refer to as El Catrin. Creepy." Number 9. Johann Georg Forst. This 16th century German astrologer and alchemist was an intelligent and successful man, but this wasn't enough for him. He wanted supreme power and knowledge, so he called upon the devil to provide him with it in return for his soul. For 16 years, he enjoyed his newfound power before he attempted to back out of the agreement. However, the devil convinced him to renew the pact, knowing that upon his death, Johann's soul would reside for eternity in hell. After 24 long years, the devil announced to Johann that his death was approaching. A huge explosion was heard from Johann's room that night, which was believed to be the act of Satan reclaiming his soul. The only thing remaining from the eruption was bits and pieces of Johann's body. Number 8. Sarah Good. Sarah Good was one of the first 3 women to be accused of witchcraft in the Salem witch trials, which occurred in 1692 in Massachusetts. On March 25th, 1692, Sarah was tried for witchcraft. When she was brought in, the accusers immediately began to rock back and forth and moan, seemingly in response to Sarah's presence. Later in the trial, one of the accusers fell into a fit. Sarah denied the allegations against her, but another woman on trial admitted to being the devil's servant. She stated that a tall man dressed in all black came to them, demanding they sign their names in a great book. Although initially refusing, she eventually wrote her name after Sarah and another woman forced her to. When Sarah was allowed the chance to defend herself in front of the 12 jurors in the Salem Village Meeting House, she argued her innocence, proclaiming the other 2 as real witches. In the end, however, Sarah was convicted of witchcraft and sentenced to death. So, did she really see the devil, or was she innocent? Who knows? Number 7. Strayed from the path. This is the testimony of Jennifer Perez, who was brought up in a Christian home. She strayed from that path, got into drugs, died, and was sent to hell. Fortunately, she was given a second chance, but this is her story. She was in the hospital and her spirit woke up, but her body didn't. As a spirit, 2 men dressed in red approached her and told her to come with them. She went to heaven and saw the Lord and 2 angels, Gabriel and Michael. She and Gabriel went through a black door, and it was dark and they were falling. The farther they fell, the hotter it was, and she said it smelled like sulfur. They got to the bottom and she realized that she was in hell, seeing people being tortured by various demons. The cries and torture scared her, and then she saw a massive red creature in the middle of it all just watching everything. She assumed that this was the devil, and it terrified her. After this, she then ascended back to heaven and was asked for a second chance. She then woke up in the hospital, alive, and devoted the rest of her life to God. Number 6. Andy Brethern. One day, Andy decided to make a deal with the devil, like someone does. He said, "My family loved God more than me, and I had a teenage reaction and decided to go my own way. I thought I'd make an actual pact with the devil, and the pact went along the lines of, you give me this, and I'll give you my life." He took me at my word, and it was a very conscious decision that I will always regret. Eventually, Andy restored his faith in Christianity, but while Andy acknowledges Jesus' power is not even comparable to Satan's, he says, the devil was not going to let him go easily. He was attacked spiritually, but not just verbally, but physically as well. He said, "There were images and voices. I spent night after night praying against apparitions and stuff all around me all the time. It's a reality. Some people still won't believe it happens, but it does. I clearly remember an elder suggesting I go and pray and read my Bible. I picked up my Bible and it was like someone stabbed me in the eye and it burned so much until I put the Bible down, then it would stop."
In our number 5 spot today, we have Urbain Grandier. Born in 1590, Urbain was a French Catholic priest who was known as being a little promiscuous with some of the nuns. Look, there's no judgment from me at all, but I'm just saying, the Catholic Church now doesn't like that. I can't imagine pre-1600s Catholic Church just being cool with that, but anyway, it is said that he actually took quite a public stance against the church's view on celibacy. Because of his escapades, there were points where people who had indulged with him were now accusing him of witchcraft and using dark magic in order to tempt them. This led to a trial which did end in acquittal, but France's chief minister did not like Urbain at all. The priest had apparently published some less than kind criticism about him, so naturally he returned the favor and ordered a second trial. This time Urbain was put through some grueling interrogations, and while it certainly was inhumane, it led to the discovery of quite a document. One that was apparently found in his belongings. It was a contract that is said to have been written in Latin and covered with strange symbols. The contract was signed by Urbain as well as several demons, including the devil himself. Basically, the contract promised him the love of women, the respect of monarchs, that sort of thing, in exchange for his allegiance to the devil. In the end, this led to Urbain being found guilty of making a deal with the devil, and he was sentenced to death.
Number 4. The circus. In this story, this man's father told his son about the day he met the devil. It took place in Juarez, Mexico in the year 1942 when his father was 20 years old. The circus had arrived in town and the man's father and his younger brother went to check it out, and they ran into a short, stubby man wearing a dinner jacket. This stranger introduced himself and said he auditioned for a job at the circus, but the owner turned him down because his act was so frightening that the owner accused him of being the devil. They asked if they could see the trick, and he said yes, but they would have to come to the trailer where he lives. They went to the stranger's place, and he put on a cape and a white glove on his right hand. He started running his left hand over, under, and around his gloved right hand, all while closing and opening his right hand and wiggling his fingers. The stranger then started chanting some strange words in another language. Then he grabbed the tip of the white glove and removed his glove. His hand was gone. It was all bones from his skeleton. The brothers ran out scared, and the stranger stood at the top of the steps, just smiling. Then on the ground was a wooden plank with long nails pointing up. The stranger jumped off the steps and landed right on those nails. They went right through his shoes and blood started to flow. The man's father stood there transfixed as the stranger started to laugh again while pointing at the man's father with his bony finger. They ran away again, and the man's father knew that it was the devil, and they were grateful to be able to escape. Number 3. God wanted her to see hell. Josefa Menendez was a young Spanish sister who had a short religious life of great suffering and experienced many revelations throughout her life. More than once she was taken to hell to witness and feel the suffering firsthand. Sister Josefa was reluctant to write on the subject of hell, and did so only to conform to her Lord's wishes. She wrote about her experiences in her journal, and she described it as the greatest torment of hell, namely the soul's inability to love. love. She wrote, "One of these damn souls cried out, 'This is my torture that I want to love and cannot. There is nothing left me but hatred and despair. If one of us could so much as make a single act of love, but we cannot, we live on hatred." As mentioned, she went to hell multiple times, but one time she saw the devil. She wrote, "Souls were crying out and the devil answered, 'Insinuate yourselves by including carelessness in them, but keep in the background so that you are not found out. Tempt these others into ambition, into self-interest, to acquiring wealth without working, whether it be lawful or not." That entry was from February 3rd, 1923. She visited hell many times after that, but didn't report on seeing the devil again. And that sounds absolutely terrifying. Number 2. Jennifer Perez. This is the testimony of a 15-year-old girl who was brought up in a Christian home. She strayed from that path, got into drugs, died, and was sent to hell. Fortunately, she was given a second chance, but this is her story. She was in the hospital and her spirit woke up, but her body didn't. As a spirit, 2 men dressed in red approached her and told her to come with them. She then went to heaven and saw the Lord and 2 angels, Gabriel and Michael. She and Gabriel went through a black door and it was dark and they were falling. The farther they fell, the hotter it was, and it smelled like sulfur. She was in hell, and she was seeing people being tortured by various demons. The cries and torture scared her. She then saw a massive red creature in the middle of it all that was just watching everything. She assumed that was the devil and it terrified her. She then ascended back to heaven and was asked for a second chance. She then woke up in the hospital, alive, and devoted her life to God. And coming in at number 1 is Sister Josefa Mendez. This young Spanish sister, who had a short religious life of great suffering, experienced revelations throughout much of her life. More than once, she was taken to hell to witness and feel the suffering firsthand. Sister Josefa was reluctant to write on the subject of hell, and did so only to conform to her Lord's wishes. She wrote about her experiences in her journal. Sister Josefa described it as the greatest torment of hell, namely was the soul's inability to love. She wrote, "One of these damned souls cried out, 'This is my torture that I want to love and cannot. There's nothing left in me but hatred and despair. If one of us could so much as make a single act of love, but we cannot, we live on hatred." As mentioned, she went to hell multiple times, but one time she saw the devil. She wrote, "Souls were crying out and the devil answered. Insinuate yourselves by inducing carelessness in them, but keep in the background so that you are not found out. Tempt these others with ambition, to self-interest, to acquiring wealth without working, whether it be lawful or not." That entry was from February 3rd, 1923. She visited hell many times after that, but didn't report on seeing the devil again.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Johann Faust. According to the stories passed down about this man, it is said that he was an alchemist and astrologer who lived in Germany during the early 1500s. It is said that in his plight to become the smartest man in the world, while also enjoying as many earthly pleasures as possible, he summoned the help of a demon named Mephistopheles. There are terrible stories about how cruel and truly evil this man was, and as a professor, it is said he looked down on everyone else. Local priests apparently believed that he had actually made a deal with the devil in which he sold his soul to him, and there are also other stories that say his pet dog was actually a demon who was able to shapeshift. During his life, he did publish several grimoires, and in 1540, while conducting some sort of alchemic experiment, his laboratory exploded. In our number 9 spot today, we have Jonathan Moulton. Jonathan is a man who was born in 1726 and he was known for his military career. He served in King George's War as well as in the French and Indian Wars, but after his service is where the story really starts. Basically, after his time fighting was over, he went on to become one of New England's wealthiest men. This caused heads to swivel and rumors to swirl because this wasn't something that was normally seen. This all gave way for the rumor that Jonathan had struck this luck of fortune because he was actually working with the devil. People began to say that for financial gain, he in turn gave his eternal devotion and even his soul over to the devil. The devil would visit him every month in order to fill up his boot with gold. You know what happens with things like this though, people get greedy. It is said that despite this lavish lifestyle he was already living, he wanted more, and this led him to make the mistake of trying to trick the devil. He cut a hole in the floor above his basement and placed a boot over it, which also had a hole in the heel. Of course, he did this so that when the devil came with the gold, he'd get a whole basement full rather than just the boot. But the devil of course caught on. From there, it is said that the devil burned down Jonathan's house along with all of the gold that lay inside. In our number 8 spot today we have Niccolo Paganini. If you search people who made a deal with the devil, Niccolo is one of the first names that pops up. Niccolo was a professional violinist who was born in 1782. His parents began to send him to lessons when he was just 5 years old, and by age 15 he was already touring the world because he was so talented. What's really interesting about Niccolo and his story, other than his obvious musical genius however, is the rumors surrounding his talent and subsequent recognition. According to some, people believe that his own mother summoned the devil in order for her son to be the extreme talent that he was. There are many modern diagnoses that could potentially explain some of what made Niccolo so talented, and I mean, we all know quite well that sometimes people are just born with extreme talent, but of course in the early 1800s people and their imaginations certainly ran wild. The final reason why people believe he may have made a deal with the devil is because shortly before his death, he was quite sick. The doctors had a feeling he was nearing death, so they sent in a priest to pray over him. When he first saw the priest, it is said that he freaked out and sent the priest away. Many people believe that him pushing the priest away was only a confirmation of the fact that he was working with the devil.
Number 7. North Berwick Witches. The North Berwick witch trials were in 1590, where a number of people from East Lothian, Scotland were accused of witchcraft. The trials ran for 2 years and implicated over 70 people. The witches allegedly held their covens on the Aled Green, part of the modern-day North Berwick Harbour area. One source for the events is a 1591 pamphlet news from Scotland. King James VI wrote a dissertation on witchcraft and necromancy titled Demonology in 1597. More than 100 suspected witches were arrested and several confessed under torture to having met with the devil in the church at night and devoted themselves to doing evil, including poisoning the king and other members of his household and attempting to sink the king's ship.
In our number 6 spot today we have Giuseppe Tartini. Giuseppe was an Italian violinist and composer who lived during the 1700s. He went on to compose a song called The Devil's Trill Sonata. Called The Devil's Trill Sonata. And not only this, but he claimed to wake up one night to find Satan sitting on the edge of his bed playing the violin. Seems as though the devil really likes violins, apparently. What's extremely curious is after this alleged encounter, it is said that Giuseppe's violin skills hit heights never seen before. He was able to suddenly play extremely complicated trills that are impossible for most musicians. Apparently even today the sonata is too difficult for most musicians to play, which is why people believe that perhaps this story really was true.
Number 5. TikTok Doctor. Once, a man who was pronounced dead by his doctor after being injured said that rather than seeing a bright light and the feeling of coming home, he instead saw hell itself and met the devil. A doctor took to TikTok to explain that he encountered a young man in his early 20s who had been stabbed in the heart after being involved in a deal that went wrong. Not willing to let the man die, medical staff took the victim into surgery, kept him from losing too much blood, and treated the wound in his heart. The doctor remembers the man waking up 4 hours later and crying, claiming that he went straight down to hell and looked straight in the eyes of the devil. The man said he could see the doctors working to save his life, and having never prayed before, gave it a try, at which point an angel pulled him back up out of hell. Remembering how clear the man had been, the doctor said it was the most amazing experience because he was legit. I mean, nobody makes up an experience like that. The last I heard, he's completely changed his life, he gave his life to God, and I still to this day, the look in his eyes when he woke up, the terror, I'm absolutely convinced he did meet the devil.
In our number 4 spot today we have Aleister Crowley. This man is quite well known for being the leader of an occult group, and this really does stem back even into his childhood. It is said that quite early on, Aleister started calling himself the Beast and the Antichrist, and he is even quoted as saying that God and Satan fought over his soul. In one of his books he wrote, quote, "I was in the death struggle with self. God and Satan fought for my soul those 3 long hours. God conquered. Now I have only one doubt left. Which of the twain was God?" Many people believe that perhaps he made a deal with Satan, but it is possible that these are just rumblings based on Aleister's teachings and beliefs.
Number 3. Alex Bedsoe. Alex Bedsoe saw the devil in 1973 when they were 10 years old. Apparently, the devil was arrested and in a jail cell, so Alex went with a man named Tater to see it. Tater had a beat-up truck, and he had claimed to have shaken the devil's hand. When Andy got there, he saw the cell windows, and only one cell had its lights on. He said, "I could only see the plaster ceiling, then a shadow moved across it. The shadow stopped, it was in the shape of a human head, except 2 small horns rose from it. Then, suddenly, the head was standing at the window, looking out into the night, looking, I was certain, right at me. I could only see it from the nose up, and because the light was behind it, I could make out no facial details. But the horn seemed to be jet black, and the hairless head was in fact a deep, dark red." The next day, people in the trailer park talked about nothing else. The county sheriff came to get him about 1 in the morning, but there wasn't nobody in the cell. Everybody figured it was some kind of joke played by the pastor. I never asked about that night, and as I grew older, I accepted that the suggestion hovering in the hot summer air had worked on my child's brain and conjured what I thought I'd seen. Except for one thing. About a week afterwards, Tater started driving around in a new truck. I mean brand new, a 1975 Chevy Blazer with 4-wheel drive and a camper shell. Lots of people asked where he'd gotten the money for it, since otherwise his lifestyle didn't change. For me, the source of the new truck was plain as day, and the proof, it was painted red. Devil red.
In our number 2 spot today, we have Christoph Haizmann. Back in 1677, Christoph was an artist who was working on a castle in Austria. He was so talented at his job that he had been commissioned by the nobles to do this work. There were rumblings about how he may have sold his soul to the devil, but no one was sure of it until it is said that Christoph confessed. He said he had 9 years prior and that he regretted it very much now and actually wanted an exorcism. They demanded to know if he was a practicing witch, but in the end it was decided that he was not, and that instead the devil just had a really strong hold on him. The local priest began giving Christoph exorcisms, and during these sessions Christoph explained that he had these intense visions where he was coming face to face with the devil, who was in the form of a dragon. The dragon was holding the contract that held Christoph's soul, and this is when he was able to rip it out of the dragon's talons. When he woke up, it seemed as though he was cured. After this, he began painting pictures of the devil, and he even painted a story with multiple panels that told the story of how he sold his soul and how they helped him get it back. In our number 1 spot today, we have Antoine Rose. This woman from the 15th century is often credited with our modern day image of a witch riding on a broomstick. She became known as the Witch of Savoy, and she is said to have confessed to regularly meeting with the devil. I mean, let's be honest, history doesn't exactly have a good record with those accused of witchcraft, so it isn't quite clear if this deal with the devil was real, or if perhaps Antoine could just add 1 + 1 and then suddenly she was accused of being a witch and had to find a way to try and defend herself. Legend goes that she was in a position where she was in dire need of money, and when she asked her neighbor for help, they led her to a group of people who convinced her to ask the devil for help. When the devil appeared, he agreed to help her, of course in exchange for her rejection of God and her promise to worship him. Story has it that she said the devil had a low, raspy voice when he appeared to her in human form, and she also apparently said that she was quite afraid of him, which, I don't know, personally makes a lot of sense. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Elvis Presley. There have been rumors and conspiracy theories surrounding Elvis Presley's success and his alleged deal with the devil to achieve fame and fortune. Some fans and theorists believe that Presley's success was not solely due to his musical talent, but rather his involvement in the occult and the supernatural. One of the most prevalent rumors surrounding Presley's alleged deal with the devil is the fact that he was born a twin, but his brother Jesse Garon was stillborn. According to the rumor, Presley made a pact with the devil to trade his twin brother's life for his own success. I personally think that that is a particularly cruel rumor and conspiracy, and am much more on the side of those who believe that Presley's interest in mysticism and the occult was evidence of his involvement in dark practices. Some point to his love for black magic and spiritualism as proof that he made a deal with the devil. Despite the persistent rumors, there is no concrete evidence that Elvis Presley ever sold his soul or made a deal with the devil. These rumors are likely just a product of his enduring fame and the allure of the supernatural. In our number 9 spot today, we have Justin Bieber. I'll be honest, I am a believer, so it was news to me when I found out that some people think he too has sold his soul. Some have pointed to his music videos and lyrics, as well as his public behavior and controversial actions as evidence of his supposed pact with the devil. People believe that Bieber's meteoric rise to fame and success at a young age was too sudden to be natural, and that he must have made a deal with the devil to achieve it, while others point to his lyrics, music videos, and imagery, which they believe contain hidden symbols and messages associated with the occult. Many of these claims are most likely the result of speculation, rumors, and conspiracy theories fueled by Bieber's controversial personal life and the internet's tendency to spread sensationalized stories, but hey, who am I to say for sure? In our number 8 spot today, we have Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth was a Hungarian noblewoman who lived from August of 1560 to August of 1614. She was born into one of the oldest and most powerful families in Transylvania, and she was well educated and ran various estates and bore many children. Oh, and this is all happening while she is also killing young women and bathing in their blood. Yeah, weird and gross, and also terrible. Elizabeth is known for killing her servants and bathing in their blood as she believed it would keep her young. Not only this, but she is also said to have made a deal with the devil in order to gain this sort of power. All accounts of Elizabeth remember her as a terrible, evil person. It is said that her number of victims most likely ranges somewhere from 175 to 200, but some people claim that it might be as many as 600. It is no wonder she is referred to as Countess Dracula.
Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Devil's Violinist. That's the name given to Niccolo Paganini. Some even say he was the greatest violin player who ever lived. He was a child prodigy in Genoa, Italy, who struggled to find a teacher that he couldn't surpass immediately. By the age of 15, he was touring solo. Within a year, he had a breakdown and succumbed to alcoholism. He didn't reappear in the public eye until the age of 22, but this time he was somehow better than ever. They say he was able to play 3 octaves across 4 strings and a handspan. Now, you don't actually have to know what that means, but it's thought to be nearly impossible, even by today's standards. He was a striking sight in his performances. Very tall and very thin, with hollow cheeks, very long fingers, pale skin, and flaming eyes with thin lips that held a sardonic smile. To top it all off, he wore all black for his performances. Soon, rumors began to circulate that his violin was the devil's instrument, that Paganini had actually made a deal with the devil. Some say they saw the devil help Paganini play. Others say that they once saw lightning bolts hit the end of his bow during a performance. When he died, he turned down his last rites from a priest. The official account is that he did this because he thought he wasn't going to die, but others say it was because he feared the blessing of a priest.
In our number 6 spot today, we have Johann Faust. According to the stories passed down about this man, it is said that he was an alchemist and astrologer who lived in Germany during the early 1500s. It is said that in his plight to become the smartest man in the world, while also enjoying as many earthly pleasures as possible, he summoned the help of a demon named Mephistopheles. There are terrible stories about how cruel and truly evil this man was, and as a professor, it is said that he looked down on everyone else. Local priests apparently believed that he had actually made a deal with the devil in which he sold his soul to him, and there are also stories that say his pet dog was actually a demon who was able to shapeshift. During his life, he did publish several grimoires, and in 1540, while conducting some sort of alchemaic experiment, his laboratory exploded. Just thought that was a fun little anecdote to share with you guys.
Number 5. Sleep paralysis. You can thank YouTube for this story from a guy who said he would get sleep paralysis and often see a reoccurring creature. He said it had a human-like body but skin that looked hard and sharp. It had no teeth and very little hair, with long nails that look like they haven't been washed in months, and instead of eyes, just dark pits. Now, it's not uncommon for people to hallucinate during sleep paralysis, but he said this creature would tell him things, horrible things that hadn't happened yet, but were going to happen eventually, and then eventually they did start happening. Now he can't sleep without the aid of sleeping pills. This is terrifying.
In our number 4 spot today, we have Aleister Crowley. This man is quite well known for being the leader of an occult group, and this really does stem back even into his childhood. It is said that quite early on, Aleister started calling himself the Beast and the Antichrist, and he is even quoted as saying that God and Satan fought over his soul. In one of his books, he wrote, quote, "I was in the death struggle with self. God and Satan fought for my soul those 3 long hours. God conquered. Now, I have only one doubt left. Which of the twain was God?" Many people believe that perhaps he made a deal with Satan, but it is possible that these are just rumblings based on Aleister's teachings and beliefs.
Moving on to number 3 now, we have the Signed Pact. Father Urbain Grandier was a French Catholic priest who, in 1632, was accused by a local group of nuns that he had bewitched them and sent demons to commit evil and impudent acts with them. Investigations into Urbain reached a new level with the discovery of what people claimed was a physical contract written on paper between Urbain and the devil. The contract was said to be even signed by Urbain, the devil, and a number of different demons. It read, "We, the influential Lucifer, the young Satan, Beelzebub, Leviathan, Elimi, and Astaroth, together with the others, have today accepted the covenant pact of Urbain Grandier, who is ours. And him do we promise the love of women, the flower of virgins, the respect of monarchs, honors, lusts, and powers." That's where it ended. Well, whatever you guys think about all of that, the local court found him guilty and sent him to burn at the stake.
In our number 2 spot today, we have Theophilus of Adana. For this one, we are taking it back a little bit, all the way to 538 AD. Theophilus of Adana was a cleric in the Roman Catholic Church. So basically, one day he was elected to become the new bishop, but he ended up denying the offer, as it is said that he wanted a more priestly sort of position, instead of one with all of that power and responsibility. It is said that he wanted the position of archdeacon, which would have seen him controlling where the donation money went. So apparently, in passing on this bishop position, he thought that if he gave this bishop position to his rival, then his rival should at least be grateful enough to give him the position he wanted. But of course, this did not happen. The new bishop gave away the seat that Theophilus wanted and instead gave him the position of being a humble cleric. This made Theo super angry, and this is when he thought that maybe the church isn't as holy as he once thought they were. This is when he decided to summon the help of Satan. He ended up signing a contract with Satan in his own blood. He denounced Jesus and the Virgin Mary, and it is said that with the help of Satan, he was once again voted into the bishop position, and this time he accepted. At this point in time, it is said that he felt so guilty he confessed to this deal with the devil, and the priest who he confessed to decided that they should burn the blood-signed contract. For a second, Theo looked up, but then suddenly he collapsed and died. Many people believe that it was because he had broken his contract. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Jonathan Moulton. Jonathan is a man who was born in 1726, and he was known for his military career. He served in King George's War as well as in the French and Indian Wars, but after his service is where the story really starts. Basically, after his time fighting was over, he went on to become one of New England's wealthiest men. This caused heads to swivel and rumors to swirl because this wasn't something that was normally seen. This all gave way for the rumor that Jonathan had struck his luck of fortune because he was actually working with the devil. People began to say that for financial gain, he in turn gave his eternal devotion and even his soul over to the devil. The devil would visit him every month in order to fill up his boot with gold. You know what happens with things like this, though, people get greedy. It is said that despite this lavish lifestyle he was already living, he wanted more, and this led to him making the mistake of trying to trick the devil. He cut a hole in the floor above his basement and placed a boot over it, which also had a hole in the heel. Of course, he did this so that when the devil came with the gold, he'd get a whole basement full rather than just a boot. But the devil certainly caught on. From there, it is said that he burned down Jonathan's house along with all of the gold that lay inside.
We start off with Richard Snowden. He was kicking around in the 1700s. One night, him and 3 buddies were having a boys' night. The place was a banger. They were having an intense game of cards. The 4 of them were having such a good time that one of them exclaimed, "I hope this night will never end." But just then, there was a knock at at the door. It was a companion of one of the men they've been partying with, and he needed his friend's help immediately. There was an emergency. This obviously bummed out everyone else who was at the party. They're like, and one of the guys said, we would keep playing with the devil himself, even if he took your place. The man from the party and his companion left, and then a few moments later, there was another knock at the door. It was a wandering traveler who asked if he could come in. When he saw the men playing cards, he asked if he could join. Everyone was stoked because it means they could start ripping cards again. But this wandering traveler seemed to have just the best luck, almost supernatural luck, winning hand after hand until he cleaned everyone out. After everyone was broke, the traveler went to leave, and all the men caught a scent of brimstone. Was this just a ringer that came in to play these poor losers, or was something more supernatural afoot? I like the idea that the devil just came in and was like, yeah, I'm just gonna take everyone's money in peace. That's super funny. Number 9, the basement scratching. This one was posted anonymously on Reddit. Ooh. The story starts with a girl who's having a bunch of friends over for a night of drinking, movies, and someone decides to pull out a Ouija board. Hot tip for never encountering demons: don't play with Ouija boards. They're all having some fun with the board, asking it questions, messing around. Typical Ouija hijinks. Not long after that, everyone goes home. That night, the girl is woken up by scratching coming from her basement. She thinks it's probably mice and she tries to go back to sleep. But then the scratching turns into knocking and then a loud bang. She's startled, jumps out of bed, grabs her phone, runs and locks herself in the bathroom, and she keeps the lights off in the bathroom just in case it's someone breaking in. She doesn't want them to know where she is. But just then, she feels a hand grip down on her shoulder and someone whisper, "Hello?" She wraps the story up with saying she was up all night with all the lights on in the house, and the next day she moved some of her stuff into her brother's house and never went back. Number 8, the Pale Man. Now we have Alex. Alex says back in 2003 he was working late night at a bar. It was getting close to closing time on a pretty slow night, so everyone had cleared out except for one guy. He didn't recognize him, but the guy did seem pretty drunk. When he told the guy that they were closing soon, he asked him if he would walk him to the bus stop just outside of the bar. He was worried about getting mugged. Alex was feeling nice that day, so he was like, yeah, no problem. He helped the man out of the bar, and just before they got to the stop, the man grabbed him by the arm. His hand was so cold it felt like it was burning his skin. And then the barfly turned to him and his eyes were pitch black. Alex was so stunned he couldn't move. Then the man said, "Maryland is rotting." He pushed the man down, ran back into the bar, and Marilyn was the name of his wife who had recently passed away. Ooh.
In our number 7 spot today, we have Madonna. Madonna has been accused of making a deal with the devil for her success and longevity in the music industry. The rumors have persisted over the years due to her use of provocative and controversial imagery in her performances, as well as her supposed connections to secret societies and the occult. Some people believe that her massive success in the music industry and her often controversial behavior are all signs that she made a deal with the devil. Others point to her use of religious imagery in her music and performances, which they believe is a deliberate attempt to subvert traditional religious values. Some people just can't get over that the girl wants to have fun, and she's been having fun in the public eye for decades now. I get it, Madonna gets a little carried away from time to time, but that doesn't mean the woman sold her soul. Or does it?
Number 6, witches. Sometimes you start doing something because it's trendy, and then you get halfway up a climbing wall and you realize you're afraid of heights. Well, Danielle got too deep into something in a similar way. She read a book on witches and thought it'd be fun to join her local coven. I think we should start with knitting. Maybe knitting before witchcraft. Anyways, she got with them, and after a few months she got invited to her first seance. So she went. And it was in a creepy basement, as it should be, and when she got there, there was someone who was tied down and sleeping. She didn't recognize the girl, but she followed along with the ritual because peer pressure is very strong, guys. The chanting and the ceremony got more and more intense, and then everything stopped. They untied the girl and then sat in a circle around her. The girl who was previously tied up sat up, looked at Danielle, and then spit what looked like blood all in her face. This was enough to push her over the edge, so she ran out of the basement and never went back to the coven. She said sometimes she had vicious nightmares that she was giving birth to a baby that had claws, fangs, and rotting skin. Super gross.
Next up at number 5 now, we have Saint Pio. Talked about Saint Duncan earlier, but he wasn't the only saint on this list who claims to have had a run-in with a devil. Pio was also known for his frequent and often violent battles with the devil. On one occasion, a local friar found him lying bloodied and bruised in his room. When Pio came around, he said that he had been attacked by either Satan or one of his demons, which had left him with 3 broken ribs. On one night in 1906, Pio heard footsteps coming from the next room, which he thought was his friend, Friar Anastasio. He went to the window and tried to call out to invite him in for a chat. He found that his voice had gone though, out of nowhere. He just couldn't speak. Then he noticed a large black hound sitting menacingly on a nearby window ledge. In his account of what happened next, Pio said, "I saw the big dog enter through the window and there was smoke coming from its mouth. I fell on the bed and I heard a voice from the dog that said, 'Him it is him.' While I was still on the bed, the animal jumped up to the ledge of the window, then to the roof and disappeared." His colleagues believed that the devil was targeting him because of all the exorcisms that Pio had performed over the years. They said that on many occasions, before leaving the body of a possessed man, they would actually hear the devil shout, "Padre Pio, you give us more trouble than Saint Michael. Do not steal the bodies from us and we will not bother you."
4. The new house. You move into a new home and you get inspected and they say everything's good, but little did you know there's a demon in the house. This happened to JD when him and his family moved into a new home, and then weird things started happening. Stuff would go missing, things would move at night, sometimes he would hear laughing. It was just unsettling. It was unsettling but not terrible until one night he was woken up by his bedroom door slamming shut. He sat at the edge of his bed and he saw it. It looked like a decrepit old woman with flesh falling off her bones and pointed teeth. This thing let out a scream so loud he closed his eyes in fright, but when he opened his eyes, the thing was gone. They moved out of the house not long after that.
In our number 3 spot today, we have Beyonce. Queen Bee, an absolute living legend. Like her husband though, who we spoke about on part 1, Beyonce has also been accused of being a member of the Illuminati and selling her soul for fame and fortune. The claim that Beyonce sold her soul is a conspiracy theory that has been circulating online for several years. However, there is no evidence to support this claim. Just don't want the bee people to come for me. The belief that Beyonce sold her soul likely stems from her success, which some people may find hard to believe without a supernatural explanation. I do understand that one. I mean, did you see Homecoming? Additionally, her music and performances often incorporate religious and spiritual imagery, which may further fuel the rumors. Also forgot to include that people think she's a part of the Illuminati. Okay, that's important. People think that she is directly related to a satanic organization. The success of talented and hardworking individuals like Beyonce is typically the result of dedication, perseverance, and talent, but some people just swear it's soul selling.
Number 2. Little Brother. Blake wrote this one out on 4chan. He said that when he was a kid, he would often hear footsteps at night, but he was so young that he didn't know that this was unusual. One night, the footsteps were so loud that they woke him up. He was curious, so he went to go inspect them. He followed the noise until he came across a boy sitting with his back to him crying. He asked if the boy was okay, and then the boy turned to look at him and he had no face. He was terrified and ran into his parents' room screaming. Nothing like this ever happened again, but he never forgot that night. Number 1. Home Alone. As I stated before, don't mess around with Ouija boards. This was submitted by Rebecca on Reddit. She said one night she was home alone bored, so she started playing around with a Ouija board her brother had got her. While using the board, she asked if anyone was there. It slid to yes. It was spooky, but she also found it kind of exciting. She asked for the name and she got a series of symbols that didn't make sense. She then asked if they were nice and it slid to no. This time she was freaked out, so she took her hands off the board and then the toggle started moving on its own to spell out "Let's play" and then flew off the board. Then banging on the windows and all around the house started. The lights started flickering on and off, and she said she felt like she was choking on something. She ran into the bathroom, locked the door, and then spit black sludge into the sink. Terrified, she looked up into the mirror and didn't see her face, but what she describes as the devil's grin. After this, she fainted. Rebecca said her family found her on the bathroom floor. She later went for psychiatric treatment, but all tests came back to say that she had no mental disorders. So who knows what really happened.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have The Illusionist. This is said to be a true story from Juarez in Mexico of when the devil appeared to a man there. It happened in 1942 and was later told by his son before spreading around the world. On a summer's day, the man went down to see the circus in town with his father and his brother. The shows weren't very interesting that year, but they met two girls and went off to hear some live music. Suddenly, they were stopped by a short man in a dinner jacket. He claimed that he was the greatest illusionist in the world, but that the circus turned him down because his act was so terrifying. The owner had accused him of being the devil. This got the man and his brother's attention. The stranger said they could see the amazing trick at his home. They followed the stranger back and sat on a sofa in his trailer. The stranger extended his arm and began running his left hand over his gloved right hand, all while chanting a strange tongue. He asked if they were ready. They said yes. He pulled off the glove and everyone screamed. To their horror, the hand was now a skeleton hand, still wiggling its fingers. The man's brother got up to take a closer look. The stranger grabbed the top of his head with his bony hand and said he was now really going to show them something. At this point, they all ran and screamed. The man stopped and looked back. The stranger was standing on top of the steps and laughing at them. On the ground was a wooden plank with long nails pointing up. The stranger jumped off the step and landed right onto a nail. Blood poured out of his boot, but he continued to laugh. The man just stared at him, transfixed, until his brother grabbed him and they both ran away. They knew it was the devil. They felt it was the devil, and they say it was a day they can never forget. Next up at number 9 now, we have Robert Johnson. He's one of the most legendary blues musicians of all time, whose music went on to influence other musicians for generations. Aside from his music, folks may tell you another story about Robert Johnson, that he met the devil. They say that one day Robert was walking down the highway on a cool October night when he came to a crossroads. A tall man was sitting there on a log by the side of the road. He said that he knew Robert and asked him if he wanted to play the guitar like nobody had ever played it before, to be the king of the Delta blues. He said yes, he wanted that. The devil warned him though that although his music will enchant the crowds, his soul will now belong to him. This is not just any crossroads, the devil said. I put this X here for a reason, and I've been waiting on you. Then the devil possessed him. Robert's eyes rolled upwards in their sockets. The moon pierced his eyes. Then he looked at the man straight in the eyes and said, "Step back, devil man. I'm going to Rosedale. I am the blues." Now, whether or not you believe that story, Robert Johnson was an incredible blues musician. I was actually listening to him as I wrote this script, and he also died under mysterious circumstances involving some sort of poison when he was 27 years old, which historians are still trying to fully understand. Moving on to number 8 now, we have St. Dunstan. He was a 10th century hermit who lived in Glastonbury in England. One day a mysterious stranger approached him and asked that St. Dunstan use his skill in smithing to make a chalice for him, a sort of holy cup if you like. Dunstan agreed and set to work. As he worked away though, he saw the stranger change form from man to woman, from woman into a child, flowing from one to the next. Dunstan realized that this was the devil, but he tried to act as if he hadn't noticed. Then, when the chance presented itself, he grabbed a pair of red-hot tongs from the fire and pierced them into the stranger's nostrils, causing the devil to cry out in pain and flee. A while later, the devil returned, this time as a vagrant street performer playing the harp. Dunstan grabbed him by the leg this time and began shoeing him. Then he nailed a horseshoe to his cloven foot. The devil screamed in agony and agreed to be released on the condition that he never approach a house with a horseshoe hanging over the doorway ever again. This gave birth to the legend that horseshoes are lucky and even keep the devil at bay.
Number 7, the forest. Sometimes when you're a kid, your parents tell you not to do something, and sometimes you're like, I'm gonna do it anyways. Well, sometimes you should listen. This encounter comes from Charlie when he was 13. He went up to the cabin with his father. It was just gonna be a weekend next to lake having fun with your old pa. But his dad had one rule about going out at night: don't venture into the forest. So what did our young friend do right after his dad fell asleep? Well, he went to go check out the forest. He says at first it was actually quite beautiful. The moon was big and lighting up all the trees. Then he heard a noise, not an animal, but a laugh. He looked deep into the forest and saw a tall, slim figure, not like an animal at all, but like a stretched out, lanky man and rigid. He couldn't make out anything on its face except for a grin that shined in the moonlight. Then it reached out its hand and motioned to him with his finger to come over. He obviously ran the hell out of there. He said he never told his dad because he didn't want to get in trouble, but he never forgot what he saw.
Coming in at number 6 now, we have The Richest. This is the story of Jonathan Moulton. He was an American general who helped the US win the Revolutionary War. He's also known for trying to trick the devil, apparently. Despite being very rich, Moulton wanted more. One night, sitting in front of his fireplace, Moulton said out loud that he'd sell his own soul to the devil to be the richest man in the province. Not one to miss out on the offer of a soul, the devil appeared right there and said that he would make the deal and fill Moulton's boots with gold coins every single month. For a while, Moulton enjoyed finding the gold in his boots every month, but soon he wanted more, and he hatched a cunning plan. He cut the bottom of his boots off and put them on top of the chimney. The devil filled up the boots, but eventually noticed the shoes never filled. The coins were just tumbling down the chimney where Moulton was practically swimming in them. As revenge, the devil took back all the gold he'd ever given Moulton. He burned down the house and kept his soul in hell for eternity. Legend says that years after his death, Moulton's grave was opened, and instead of a skeleton, they found a coffin filled with gold.
In our number 5 spot today, we have Michael Jackson. Definitely one of the celebrities who has had the most connections to the occult. Some fans and theorists believe that Jackson's success, talent, and enduring popularity could not be attributed solely to his hard work and dedication, but rather to a supernatural pact that he had made. One of the most persistent rumors surrounding Jackson's supposed deal with the devil was that he made the pact at the age of 12. According to this rumor, Jackson traded his soul to achieve success in the music industry. Others have pointed to Jackson's fascination with the occult and his interest in spiritual practices as evidence of his involvement in the dark arts. Some also cite his dramatic physical transformations as proof of his alleged deal with the devil. At the end of the day, did Michael Jackson have a deal with the devil? Well, I guess I'll just let you decide for yourself. It's my way of saying no, none of these people did, because the devil doesn't exist.
Next up at number 4 now, we have Johann Georg Faust. A 1507 book titled Historia and Tale of Dr. Johannes Faustus tells the story of Johannes Faustus, who allegedly met the devil. According to the book, he was a German scholar who, quote, loved what ought not to be loved. It says that he craved nothing more than forbidden knowledge. One day, Johannes traveled to a crossroads in a forest and summoned the devil. He stood inside a protective circle and performed an ancient and unholy ritual. Soon, lightning came crashing down and the entire forest was destroyed. Demons emerged in 3 forms. First, a dragon, then as a man made of fire, and then as an old monk. After hours of conversation, Faust agreed to trade his soul so that his every question would be answered for 24 years. He told himself that things would be fine because, in his words, the devil might not be so black as they used to paint him, nor hell so hot as the people say. Well, the story ends by saying that he was wrong and people were right. It claims that when Johannes died, his soul went straight to hell, where he spent an eternity of torture, wishing for death, but finding that even death had forsaken him.
Number 3, the graveyard. I got another hot tip for you guys. Don't go to graveyards at night. Nothing good has ever happened in a graveyard at night. But Monica was grieving her recently dead mother and couldn't sleep, so she thought taking a drive down to the burial site might put her at ease. When she got there, it seemed like no one was there. She walked up to her mom's spot and she stood there reminiscing for a moment. Then she saw a man in a dark coat walking towards her about 50 feet away. She was scared, so she started to rush back to her car. For a moment, she looked back and caught a glimpse of the man's eyes. They were glowing yellow. She started sprinting to her car. She got in and sped off. Once she was far enough away, she pulled over to gather herself. Then she felt it. It felt like something dark was close. She looked in the rearview mirror and saw the glowing eyes from inside the car. She then looked back and there was nothing. She then sped off again until she got home. Then, when she got to her apartment, there was a note right on her door. The note was unmarked, but it read, "See you soon." That is Terrifying.
Moving on now to number 2, we have Saint Gemma Galgan. In her diaries, she wrote that she believed the devil himself was waging a personal war against her. In one famous passage, she wrote, "The demon came before me as a giant of great height, and kept saying to me, 'For thee there is no more hope of salvation. Thou art in my hands.' I replied that God is merciful, and therefore I fear nothing. Then, giving me a hard blow on the head in a rage, he said, 'Cursed be you,' and then he disappeared. I then went into my room to rest, and there I found him. He began again to strike me with a knotted rope, and wanted me to listen to him while he suggested wickedness. I said no, and he struck me even harder, knocking my head violently against the ground. At a certain point, it came to my mind to invoke Jesus, Father, Eternal Father, through the most precious blood of Jesus, free me. I then don't quite know what happened next. That contemptible beast dragged me from my bed and threw me, hitting my head against the floor with such force that it pains me still. I became senseless and remained lying there until I came to myself a long time afterwards. Jesus be thanked." That was just one entry, and it was very intense. From the look of her diary, it wasn't her first encounter, and it certainly wasn't her last. And finally, number 1 now, we have Pope Sylvester II. If you had to pick one person who isn't in league with the devil, you may pick the Pope. But back in the 10th century, people thought the first French Pope was a master of the dark arts and had sold his soul to the devil. He was undoubtedly a genius. He was known for his work in mechanics, mathematics, astronomy, clocks, organs, introducing Arabic numerals to Western Europe, as well as natural science, music, philosophy, and theology. That was a lot for one person, especially back then. After he died, rumors began to circulate that Sylvester had made a deal with the devil, that the devil had given to him his intelligence and wisdom in return for his soul. This was a terrifying prospect for Catholics at the time. The thought that their own leader, God's representative on earth, had been meeting and dealing with the devil in secret. In recent years, experts agree that he likely got his skills and knowledge from regular meetings with scholars from all over the known world, and not from some dark dealings. What do you think?